Welcome to the Muay Thai Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, James Nicol. I'm a Thai boxer and nutritionist, and my goal through this podcast is to bring free, evidence-based nutrition education to the Muay Thai community. In today's episode, we're going to be talking all about creatine and whether this is an appropriate supplement for fighters to take. For those of you who don't know, creatine is one of the most popular supplements out there, especially amongst gym goers, both serious and recreational. It's perhaps one of the most well-researched supplements on the market, which is an important accolade in a market flooded with poorly researched products, the supplement market. Despite creatine's popularity with both recreational and serious weightlifters alike, creatine's use within combat sports, so Muay Thai, MMA, boxing, BJJ for example, is much less consistent and much less clear-cut. In a recent Instagram poll I posted, it was a pretty close split between my followers regarding whether they took creatine or not. 43% said yes, 57% said no. So I decided to record this podcast, answer the big questions around creatine, and so you guys, combat sports athletes, can decide whether or not creatine is a worthwhile supplement for you to take. So, let's jump into the benefits of creatine. Why would anyone take creatine? Well, there are many well-supported benefits of creatine supplementation. Many of them revolve around strength and power sports, hence its popularity with the weightlifting crowd, or at least sports that require a degree of strength and power, such as mixed sports, things like rugby, rowing, American football, and combat sports. So creatine seems most effective at improving performance in activities that are high intensity and involve repeated efforts with a short recovery time. Sounds like a fight, right? The main benefits of creatine supplementation include increased muscle strength, increased muscle size, improved intermittent sprint performance, and improved recovery. In addition, there is research to suggest that creatine could also help with endurance performance through increasing your time to exhaustion and increasing your glycogen storage. Glycogen is just how the body stores carbohydrates, and these act as fuel for high-intensity exercise. As if it wasn't impressive enough already, research has also shown cognitive improvements in memory and intelligence tasks, and a reduction in the negative effects of sleep deprivation. So, after hearing all that, I imagine the question you're now asking is, well, why would anyone not take creatine? And that's a good question. Many of the claimed negative side effects of creatine are either misguided or applicable to only a very small percentage of people. For Muay Thai, MMA, boxing, BJJ, and other weight class sports, there's only really one downside to creatine supplementation: weight gain. Now, before you freak out, this weight gain is only from water. Basically, creatine draws more water into your muscle cells. There's a lot of negativity surrounding the term water retention, but this increase in weight, which will vary a lot between individuals, is actually a sign that creatine is working. It's not going to make you look bloated, which is what most people fear. If anything, the additional water within your muscles might make you look a little bit more jacked. For anyone who does not have to make weight for a competition, creatine is pretty much a no-brainer. However, for those of us who do have to step on the scale and make a certain weight class, the answer is a little more nuanced. One other thing to consider, which isn't necessarily a drawback, is that non-responders do exist, but there's not really any other way to identify whether you are a non-responder or not, other than testing it and seeing if it works for you. So, should I take creatine or not? What I'm going to do now is I'll take you through a few questions which summarize my thought process when it comes to recommending creatine. So, the first question is, do you have a fight coming up? If the answer is no, then take it. If you do have a fight coming up, the next question is, how long do you have until the fight? If you have more than 30 days before the fight, then I recommend taking it and cutting it out around 30 days before your fight. If you have less than 30 days before your fight, it's probably best not to take it unless you are on weight already or you can afford a weight increase, i.e. you're very close to the weight class already. So, ultimately, there's a trade-off between the benefits of taking creatine and the added weight. And it's up to the individual which they would rather choose. Many of my clients who don't do drastic weight cuts can afford to take creatine right up until the fight. However, if your weight cut is on the larger side, you probably don't want to add any more weight to this. It takes around 28 days after stopping creatine supplementation for muscle creatine levels to return to baseline and therefore to lose the associated water weight. So to be safe, stop supplementing creatine about 30 days before your competition if you want your weight to return to baseline in time. Okay, so now you know what the benefits are, you know what other factors you need to consider, and you've decided whether or not it's appropriate given your current situation to take creatine. So the next logical question is, well, how do I take creatine? Typically, I recommend injecting it directly into the eyeballs to maximize absorption. Joking aside, there are a few different recommendations floating around, so I do want to clear up which version to buy, what dosage and frequency I would recommend for fighters. Firstly, you want to buy creatine monohydrate. This is the proven and most researched version. Other versions are not as well researched, they're more expensive, and some flat out don't work, so stick with creatine monohydrate. You want to take 0.05 grams per kilogram that you weigh per day. So if you're 60 kilograms, 60 times 0.05 is 3 grams per day. If you're 100 kilograms, 100 times 0.05 is 5 grams per day. So most people will take somewhere between 3 to 5 grams per day. Now, you could just take this amount every day, and after a few weeks, your muscle creatine stores will be fully saturated. This is totally fine. However, if you want to achieve this saturation in a shorter amount of time, you can load creatine. Loading creatine involves taking 4 times your recommended daily dose each day for 5 to 7 days before returning to your daily maintenance dose above. So, 4 times 3 gram doses for a 60 kilogram individual is 12 grams total, and you take that per day for 5 to 7 days. 4 times 5 gram doses for a 100 kilogram individual is 20 grams total for 5 to 7 days. This will simply mean your muscle creatine stores become full quicker. After 5 to 7 days, returning back to the single dose above per day will maintain your creatine stores. Regarding which time of day to supplement, it doesn't really matter. There may be a small benefit to taking it post-workout, but you'll experience benefits no matter when you take it. So, in summary, creatine is beneficial for strength and power-based sports, including combat sports. The associated water retention is an important consideration if you have to make weight anytime soon. Essentially, in answer to the question, should fighters take creatine? Out of camp, yes. In camp, maybe, depending on the factors I've outlined in this podcast. You should buy creatine monohydrate. You should take 0.05 grams per kilogram of your body weight per day, and you can load it if you want. I hope you found this podcast insightful and helpful. If you did, then share it with someone who you think would benefit. Would be a great way to return the favour. Okay, that's it for today's episode. If you enjoyed that, there's lots more to come. Make sure you follow the podcast, hit the bell, give us a 5-star rating. If you want to get in touch with any questions, feedback or suggestions for topics, you can email me at james@jamesnicholnutrition.com, or you can reach out to me on Instagram at jamesnicholnutrition. If you'd like to hire me as your nutritionist or to read any articles I've written, you can go to jamesnicholnutrition.com. Thanks for listening. See you in the next one.